And why aren't there new ones? Hard to come up with fairy tales. Yeah, they don't. They don't.
They just make reruns of them.
Yeah, and then they destroy old ones.
Yeah.
New ones. It's like, do you guys ever, any of you guys watch Mulan?
Yeah.
That movie sucks. The animated one? The animated one?
Oh yeah, the animated one.
That one's great.
The live action.
Why didn't you like it?
It was just went like off course of the original, like so much.
What was off course?
There was a phoenix instead of a dragon.
So why would you make it a phoenix instead of a dragon?
Well, I feel like the phoenix represents like, the phoenix comes back to life, right?
Uh-huh.
But the dragon is more of the ancestral type thing, and it just didn't match at all.
And what else was off about it?
That's all I remember.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff. How many of you guys saw the live action one? Yeah. What else was off by it? There was a lot.
Oh, there was another girl who turned into she like turned into something. I forgot.
Yeah, it was a witch, right?
Yeah, the witch.
She turned, and was there a corollary in the animated one?
No.
So in the animated version, what was Mulan's biggest problem?
She didn't want to get married, something like that.
She didn't want to get married. And what did she have to struggle through in that one?
She couldn't find, like, she wasn't like the perfect match.
No, I'm asking you guys. This is a serious question because what he's saying here is that we intuitively understand that these things are not untrue, and there's a reason that fairy tales stick with us. I'll tell you, I'll give you a heads up. You make a huge mistake if you think, fairy tales are just for kids. Fairy tales, there's not that much going on there. There is a lot going on in these. One of the reasons that we look to the old fairy tales is because they're so spectacularly well done. To do a good fairy tale, that's difficult. That's really hard to do. To just write a children's story, that's fine. Just have a talking animal or something like that who says that we should share. That's not a hard thing to do at all. But if you can convey a really deep meaning to kids, and I'm talking about at a level that they don't entirely comprehend intellectually. But I mean, think about this. So I guess you'll find out because second semester we're going to watch. I don't know, fill in the blank. It's either going to be Pinocchio, or Peter Pan, or The Lion King. And I've never taught The Lion King before, so we might do that one. But Peter Pan or Pinocchio, I've taught those before. And there's so much going on in those scenes that when you know what to look for, especially as an adult, you can sit and go, "Holy crap, that's happening? Yeah, that's happening." And you might think like, "Oh, it's because you're overthinking it." No, it's because you're underthinking it. That's why you miss this stuff. If I ask you, for example, like, why do you like I don't know, it's a painting on the wall, whatever. If I'd ask you, what do you like about the painting? You might have a hard time explaining. You might just go, it looks pretty. Okay, what does that mean, it looks pretty? Well, the colors. Okay, what about the colors? Oh, it's too many questions. I'm thinking too deeply. No, there's something about that speaks to your soul. There's something that's in these movies that speaks to our souls. That's why they're around for so long. And it should strike you as something that we say today, times have changed so much because now we have phones. No, the human condition hasn't changed, man. It's taken us 300,000 years to get to the point that we are right now as our species. And even though we have Instagram now, that doesn't mean that our condition has changed. In fact, all of this stuff seems to make it worse because things change so rapidly, the technology changes so rapidly, the world changes so rapidly, but we, as a species, don't. I mean, if you think about this, we were around for, again, almost 300,000 years, and all of a sudden someone develops the idea of having a city. So we evolved as a species that was out in the grass, that's out in the plains, that was out in the mountains, that was out in nature. And all of a sudden, in the past 200 years now, we've pulled a whole bunch of people in to cities. We're surrounded by concrete, not by trees. We're surrounded by steel and not by wood. And if you don't think that has contributed massively to mental health issues and to what we call them neuroses, alienation, isolation, feeling like we don't belong, feeling alienated from nature, then you're missing something. And if you think, oh, you're just overthinking it, then you explain why it is that we're so jacked up and we get worse and worse and worse the farther away from nature that we get. And fairy tales are like this. They speak to something in us that's primal, that's deep. I don't have to tell you what a symbol is. If you're watching a movie, like for example, you see a lake. What does a lake represent? When you see a lake, what do you think of? Swim? No, but what do you think of? Like not an activity. What does it represent? What overthink it?
Life. Yeah.
Life?
Really.
What does this mean?
I don't know, fish.
Mother Nature.
Well, you're thinking of objects. I'm asking for objects. I'm asking you to think of ideas.
Love.
Love? Who taught you that?
Fairy tales.
Don't bullshit, dude. Don't give me the fucking answers you think that you're supposed to say. That's where you're messing yourself up. What's he trying to get us to say? What does he want to say? What's the right answer? Yeah, you're overthinking it. It's weird. We'll say that, oh, you're overthinking fairy tales. I'm just asking you what a lake represents. Yeah, peace. Yeah, it's so obvious. It's peace. It's calm. Anybody ever go to a river and go, I feel like war here? No, you go to a lake. Because you feel peace. You go to a river that's going by. It's kind of going slow. It puts you at calm because of the sound, because of the image. And then when it picks up speed and there's rapids, now we have a very different feel about it. When you see a forest, you get a very specific feeling. When you see a forest, if anybody here has ever been to a forest before, or if you just seen a picture of a forest, what kind of a symbol is that? What does that represent?
I don't know.
Yeah, forest.
Overwhelming, lost.
Lost. Yeah, lost. Who taught you that?
I don't know.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. Nobody has taught you what a lake represents. Nobody has taught you what a forest represents. You just know. So now when you encounter a fairy tale and they stick a river in the middle of it, they stick a lake in it, now you know that represents something. And that doesn't mean that as a child you sit there and go, stop. According to the Jungian archetypes, this lake here represents peace, which is speaking to the shadow part of this person. No, that's not what you do. You just sit there and go, lake. But it affects you in these ways that you don't even realize because it's happening at a symbolic level. Because you're not just a body, and you're not just a soul. You're a body and a soul. You're a body that perceives the world, and you're a soul that makes sense of all that stuff that you perceive in the world. And when you neglect one, you're neglecting half of what you are. And so why is it that we think deeply about these things? Because it helps you to understand what you are and who you are. As a human being, there are certain parts of you that are just, it's like eating and breathing. It's just part of what you are as a human being. And part of what you are as a human being, in fact, one of the two things that seems to really, really separate, in fact, if you had to say one thing that separates humans from any other animal, it's exactly that. It's symbol. It's symbol. Your cat doesn't understand this. Your dog doesn't sit there and look at the bowl of food and go, this means something. The ability to recognize meaning, and not just to create it, but to recognize it. Very, very important distinction. To recognize symbol, and to recognize what these things mean. Now here's the funny thing. If you go to somebody in China, and you ask them, so, what does a lake represent? Someone in China is going to say, peace. And what does a forest represent? Lost. Mysterious. Yeah, you go, okay, thanks. And then you go down to Australia and you grab an Aborigine and you ask him from the outback, okay, what does a lake represent? He's going to say, peace. In other words, as humans, we all share this. You will be very hard-pressed to find a human somewhere on the planet, anywhere in history, that if you go there and ask them, what does a lake represent? And they say, it represents war. Yeah. Not even the Vikings would say that. And it isn't because anyone's been taught what these things mean. It's because there's something going on that speaks to you at an unconscious level, at a non-physical level, at a mind level. There's something going on there. If you're here in second semester, you'll find out what that thing is. But there is something going on that's there. And this is the level at which fairy tales speak to us. This is why I'm asking you these questions. Don't try to come up with the right answer. Come up with the answer that you're actually, when you're processing it. Think about what this is. Because when you're trying to do the right thing a lot of times, that's when you might screw this stuff up. You know, it's like if you're an athlete and you're out there and, I mean, if anyone in here throws, I don't know, like a quarterback, I think a quarterback is constantly out there and thinking about the mechanics of how they're supposed to throw the ball. No, they just do it. You just do it. Yeah, you've learned, previously, but if you overthink it in the moment, you can't do the thing that you've been training to do. If you overthink what it is, what type of answer do they want me to come up with, you're going to come up with something completely off. Now, what you should be doing is thinking about it and trying to come up with it. Not thinking about what the answer is supposed to be, but what is the answer? But again, on the other far end of that is not thinking about it at all. Because whether you think about it at all is immaterial. These things impact you. These things affect you. Whether you realize it or not, because you walk around and these things give you these kinds of emotional feedbacks that you don't even realize are playing on your subconscious. They're playing on your psyche. How is it that you make sense of the world? First things first, you have to perceive it. You have to experience it. You have to encounter it. And then you can start to make sense of it. And once you start to make sense of it, now you can start to make sense of yourself and your own place within it. It's no different from an athlete who's on a team sport athlete. You have to understand, first off, that you're on this team, and you have to understand what your role within this team is. Now you know how you fit into it, and now you can have some kind of an impact in that field because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're doing your thing. Yeah? And yeah, you depend on other people in that context to do it, but your role as a human being is to perceive the world and operate within it, to make sense of it. And this is one of the ways that we make sense of it, is through symbols. We do it intuitively. This is so that I don't have to explain things to you. If I told you guys that I have a friend, his name is Keith, true story. He owns a financial, he owns a financial planning group, I guess you'd call it. And we call him the Lake. And if I just told you guys, we call Keith the Lake. Now, me just saying that, you would now know something about Keith. Oh, he's a calm guy. He's hard to upset. You know, he's peaceful. Yeah, exactly. I don't have to tell you he's a calm guy. He's peaceful. He's hard to upset. I just have to say he's a lake. If I said to you that somebody is a mountain of a man, well, you understand what that means. I don't have to tell you. You don't simply go, you mean he's made of granite? No, I'm not. I'm saying he's made of stone. He's not even a man then, is he? Oh, you're telling me something that's not real. No, no. I'm giving you a symbol, an image to describe what this person is. Yeah? And so symbolically understanding things. Now, when all of a sudden you have a symbol that comes along, and if you're watching a movie, and let's say, say you're watching a movie, and the main character comes across a lake, and every time they see a lake, it fills them with rage, and now they have to go fight. It would be odd. You'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. You might not even realize it again. Like, you know, that the lake is supposed to be an image of peace. You just intuitively understand it. And you realize that there's something that's not quite right about what's going on here. That's why I'm asking you about Mulan, that when you ask about those differences, do you think why did the writers change it from a dragon to a phoenix? There's a reason. What does a phoenix do? Yeah, exactly. It symbolizes life and death. And how does the phoenix die? It bursts into fire. It burns out, and then how does the phoenix come back? It rises from the ashes. So if I said to you that a human being is a phoenix, you know what I'm talking about now. Now, if you don't know what a phoenix is, that's forgivable, understandable. But if you know what that thing is and you understand, without anyone having to explain it to you exactly how it operates, if you think about it, in other words, if you perceive it. There's a reason that it's a dragon in the original, and there's a reason that the writers changed it. And I'm not saying the writers changed it for the best. That's why I'm asking, like, what kind of struggles does Mulan have to overcome in the animated movie? So one of them, of course, is that she don't want to be married. That's true. Sorry. But there are other things that she has to overcome as well. Like what? Yes. So she's going to come parental pressure. And what's the pressure that her parents put on her?
They put on those high pedestal that she has to do great things.
So they tell her that she has to. They tell her she has to do great things.
Well, like, I don't know how to explain it.
Some of you guys.
Anyone want to speak up?
Yeah, help her out, man. She's carrying. She's gonna break her back, man. She's carrying the whole class. What's that? What?
Like the typical woman in that culture. They want her to follow the tradition.
Yeah, but we're missing a huge. Okay, so what's it? They want her to follow a model, follow a mold. So. But we're missing a huge part of the movie. What's most of the movie about?
I remember with her being a samurai.
Fighting. Yeah, she wants to be a soldier. She wants to be a warrior.
That's what I remember.
And she goes in there, and she goes to training. And what kind of problems does she have when she goes to training?
She's a girl, no?
She's being a woman, not a man. So first off, she has to hide who she is. You don't think that there's something symbolic about that? kids can look at that and intuitively understand that this is a person who's hiding what they are, what else does she have to overcome? We just covered this. What else? And then,
She had to, like-
this is what concerns me. I wonder if you guys are so fucking brainwashed. And I apologize if it's coming off as harsh, but I wonder if you're so fucking brainwashed that you miss the obvious. She's the biggest, baddest thing in the army, right?
Yeah.
She's a monster. She goes in and she kills everything, right? No, she doesn't. Why? Because she's small and she's not strong. This is part of the problem with the new one. The new one, what's her problem? Her problem is she's just too badass. She can just kill everything because fuck physics, right? A 110-pound woman can put a punch on someone that's just as powerful as a 250-pound man, right? I watched this video day before yesterday. A friend sent to me this dude who's throwing punches on somebody. It's a street fight, and there's this guy. He's just a big, heavy dude, and you see him. He's left-handed. He throws it, and I'm watching my mom move, and the person's just. His hand comes up, and when he comes down, you just see it hit with such incredible force. You can almost feel it watching the video. But this guy's got to be like 300 pounds, man. And it's funny because the guy's trying to grab him. His pants come off. So the guy's standing in the street, bare ass, punching somebody in the face. And I'm like, what would be worse? You know? I can't think about what would be worse than this. And then, but it all starts off because this woman comes over. And full force, she just goes, fuck, and punches him in the face. This chick's got like 130 pounds. And when she cracks him right across the face, what does he do?
Eats that.
Not a damn thing. He doesn't go anywhere. It's almost like you feel like he just got hit by some wind. But Disney will tell you in these movies that she can lay, and by the way, if anyone's like, that can happen, let's do it then. Let's do it then. Come down to the gym, sign a waiver, and we'll see. I'll let if you're 120, I'll let you crack me in the face as hard as you can, and I'm only like 40 pounds heavier than you, and I'll crack you in the face as hard as I can, and then we'll see who's standing, and then we'll see what Disney can teach us about this. But the problem is this: it isn't about so that means that they're lesser? No, it means that they're different because in the original Mulan, she's aware of her limitations, and she's able to achieve despite the limitations. There's a box that we're talking about that she's in. She's able to work outside of that box. She did in the new Mulan. They just say, "Oh, no, boxes don't exist." So if this is you, what can you learn from this? If you're watching this as a child, nothing. You're either a superhero or you're not, because that's the thing. She's a superhero. She's imbibed with supernatural powers. So that means that if you're lucky enough to be born with supernatural, anybody who's born with supernatural powers? Well, then you better not even try to overcome anything. Because the only way to overcome anything is if you're born with supernatural powers. This one teaches you that you're born with certain limitations, because everybody has limitations. That's what makes life so meaningful. I gave the example, I'm sure I gave the example already, but if we're playing Monopoly, what makes the game of Monopoly so meaningful is that there are rules. You can't just run over and grab all the money out of the bank. You can't just throw hotels wherever you want to throw them. What makes the game meaningful is that there are rules. If there are no rules to it, we're not going to play. We're just going to flip up the board and walk away because nothing means anything. It's nihilism. But if you recognize that there are rules in life and that there are limitations in life, then what makes you stronger is the overcoming of those limitations. When you deny that there are limitations, then you're denying what's beautiful about people. That's the thing about it. What makes us different is that we do have different limitations. Adam and I, we're about the same height, right? You and me? We're close. No, what do you mean? But I feel like I'm your height. So there are certain limitations I'm going to have that he's not going to have. And it goes beyond just, can he reach stuff on the top shelf? Because I'm quick, I can climb. But you have to, but to sit there and deny the obvious of physics and just go, no, we're the same size. Then now you're denying something you're denying me now the opportunity to overcome a limitation. When we don't allow children to face limitations, then we're denying them the opportunity to become something heroic. Because that's what a hero is. A hero is somebody who overcomes. It's not just a person who does badass stuff. Like you look at Superman, it's like, wow. So he's an alien who can fly and shoot laser beams, and he's incredibly strong. I don't know, I guess his problem is he's just too bad. No, he does have a limitation. If you understand what his limitation is, it's not just, oh, he's vulnerable to kryptonite. No, despite being all that, he still can't be who he is because he doesn't fit in. And the thing that he wants to have, he can't have as Superman. So as great as all that is, it's not the thing that he wants. There are some limitations that are there. When you look at traditional fairy tales, you're having the characters are overcoming limitations. They're overcoming things. And so when we come along today and we deny people that access, well, again, now we've denied them the opportunity to be heroic. That's what it is. Like, I press you on those things when we say, oh yeah, the new ones kind of suck. Okay, well, what about them sucks? We can't even put our finger on it because it's happening at this level here. We can't exactly explain it, but intuitively we understand it, and subconsciously we get it. Something's just off. When you look at Shrek, yeah, they involve all of those other fairy tales, but I'm talking about the first one, by the way. The other ones they get worse as they go. But especially the first one, Shrek has limitations. Like, yeah, he's big and he's strong, but everything else about him though boxes him in. And when is it that Shrek finally becomes heroic? When he steps outside of those boxes and he achieves. It isn't that all of a sudden he discovers, wow, I have supernatural powers once I step out. It's kind of like Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, my God, what trash is this? Her problem again, her big struggle is that she has amnesia and she has to just remember that she's a god. It isn't that she has to overcome anything. It isn't that she has to grow past herself. It isn't that she has to struggle. It's that all she has to do is just remember how she's invincible and she's great. Whatever. Look at all the other Marvel characters. They're all having to overcome something. And that's the whole thing about I mentioned before about the Hulk. That's a person who has a persona and he has a deep shadow. And in the later movies, he assimilates these two things. It's called the process is called individuation. He individuates. He joins his persona and his shadow. He becomes a whole person. He doesn't have to have a secret identity. He doesn't hide anymore. There's something special about this. So the characters that overcome, they speak to us. These new ones, we're so afraid of telling the truth about things. And we're more interested in lifting up people, whatever that means, rather than just letting people lift themselves up through a process of overcoming. We try to ignore that there are limitations, or we try to impose limitations that aren't naturally there, just to give this person something artificial to overcome. But this is maybe a problem with how we treat children generally. Any of you guys have little nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, cousins, small ones? How many like to pick them up and throw them against walls and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you? Seriously, how many of you guys like to do stuff like that? Like grab them and just like throw them on the bed to see how high they can bounce and all that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I wonder how many people will run and go, oh my God, be careful.
Their mom.
Yeah, typically, that's the mom's job. Dad's job is to see how far they can go. Boom! and bounce them. Oh my God, you mean abuse them? No, I'm saying you give them rough play. Because how else do you find what your limitations are? You take the kid, you bounce him, he's laughing his ass off, and finally, boom, he slams into the wall. And what does he do? Don't know. Let's find out. Maybe he hits the wall and he's like laughing even harder. He thinks it's funny. Maybe that's the kid who hits the wall. It's like, ow! Because they're used to mom running in and saying, oh my God, leave him alone. Or maybe he's the one whose sister goes, Dad says, you're fine, get over here. And the kid laughs and he's fine, he comes over there. Like the other day, actually about a week ago, I was teaching these little kids jujitsu, like a little 6-year-old girl, her name is Leia, she's this big, and she's like, they call me professor, like, Coach Professor, I have a scratch. I'm like, what? So I need a Band-Aid. She has a scratch on her arm. And I look, I go, oh wow, scratch. And she's like, you see the look, right? I go, wow, whack, right on her scratch. Boom, she, ow, she was laughing. She's like, ow. I said, I don't care about your scratch. I'm your coach, not your mom. Get back on the mat. So she goes running back and she gets on the mat. And now she's learned a little something, and she's learning about limitations. Now when she gets hurt, does she come running over to coach and tell him that she's hurt? No. She might tell her mom later on, but then again, she's also learned something, which is that the scratch doesn't hurt as much as I thought it did. Because maybe she was programmed, by people's reactions, or maybe she's just a natural human who's seeking attention. Who knows? But that's how you expand these kinds of things out. If you go to, I go to a playground. I was telling a friend of mine about this. We were over at not in a creepy way. We were over at Liberty Station, and she and I were hanging out by the water, and there's a playground nearby, and she works with kids too, and I was pointing out to her how they were playing, and I said, you can tell who's had rough play and who hasn't, because the kids who have had rough play, they behave way differently than the kids who haven't. And she's like, you can't know that. Well, you just watch them. And sure enough, there was like one kid who was just like, you know, going out there, and he's like walking, and he like turns around every few minutes just to make sure his mom is watching, and his mom is like, and then she even starts to follow him around on the playground while he's going down slides, and she's like on the side making sure he doesn't fall. And he's not like a 2-year-old, you know. And then there are other kids over there who are like climbing on the, you know, on the monkey bars. They're all the same age. And there's this, and then like the other one had like her brother or her sister, her brother or her whatever he is, like grabbing her legs and trying to pull her down off of them while she's like fighting to try to get across it. And then you can hear her like yelling, and then they look over and like 2 people at a bench nearby, I'm sorry, at a table nearby, they look up, and then they go right back to what they were doing. They're not going to go running over there, stop that, stop that, stop that. Because I don't know that they intuitively, I don't know that they've actually thought it through, but intuitively they understand that these limitations have to be overcome. How does that little girl understand, and what is she learning by trying to go on these monkey bars while her brother's trying to pull her off of them? She's learning something intuitively. She's learning perseverance, overcoming, keep going. You're not going to be rescued when there's problems. Don't you think that that's too much for one kid to be getting at the time? If it's just that one experience, yes. But if you see a lifetime of that as you're growing up, you can see a huge difference in people by the time they get to be 8, 7 years old, even 5 years old in some cases. You know, and some of you guys know what I'm talking about. If you have little ones around you, if you happen to know that some have rough play and some don't, you can see differences in how they walk. I can see it in the hallway here. If you walk around, you can see the differences in how people handle themselves in a classroom, how they sit, how they walk, how they move, how they talk. And I'm not just making this shit up. This is really, really well documented through research. We've been studying this for a very long time. It's intuition, it's symbol, it's stuff that operates at a deeper level. You know? And so this is one of the reasons that we look to the old stories, because they have these limitations, things that we intuitively know are maybe if they're not real, at least we know they're true, versus the things that we have now, which is trying to deny what's actually true, try to reshape it in some way that doesn't benefit anybody, really. It makes us worse off. It loses us access to being heroic. I guess you could say that. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Friday.